common question you'll get asked when you're getting into quail or you've been into it for a while is, should I have my birds on wire or on the ground? I personally prefer them on the ground. I found when I first started out I had them on wire, but whenever I'd give the opportunity to put them onto the ground, because I did have another setup, they were instantly happier. They just seemed to enjoy it a lot more. It's a much more natural environment for them to be on the ground. They dig around, dig holes, look for bugs. It's just the way their ancestors were. So I think it's just something they find more pleasant. Probably feels better on their feet than on wire. I think wire would not feel that comfortable, to be honest, to be walking around on it. But yeah, as I said, I did start out with them on the wire, and they're your birds, so you can do whatever you want with them. And you know, if you're butchering them, they're only going to live a short life anyway. So it's something to consider. But yeah, I definitely think they prefer being on the ground if you were to be able to ask them. But some of the things, obviously, if you've got them on wire, you can increase your density. So if you're looking to get high numbers, and then that's what you need to do. You need to probably put them on wire to get the high numbers. Or if you don't have a lot of outdoor space, then you want to put them inside stacked cages, just because you don't have the real estate available. So you've got to do that stacking. You definitely have to have them on wire then, because well, you can do trays, deep bed trays that you can pull out. Actually, you can do that, but wire is probably a simple setup for that. But there is a bit of a myth out there in terms of dealing with the manure. A lot of people think if you have them on wire, the manure is dealt with because it falls through, but it's far from dealt with. You still have to go in there every day or two and clear it out and then deal with it. And if any of your birds, if any of the water is near the manure, near the tray, if any of it escapes, then it will smell really bad. There is nothing worse than a couple of days old smell of wet quail manure. It's just horrendous. So there is a lot of sort of misconception out there that if you have them on wire that the manure is kind of dealt with, because usually it's not. You still need to shovel it. You can have them outside, elevated on wire, and it will fall down. So that is, as long as it's a big drop, it might start to dry out underneath. But again, it'll still get wet down there. So it's something to consider. But yes, you have to deal with the manure every day. Compare it to what I do in my colony cage. I throw in a lot of soil, like cheap low-grade soil, underneath about that thick, and then I put bedding. And the local bedding here is sugarcane mulch. So I just call it, my bedding is called mulch. A lot of people call it a deep litter. So I put that on top as well, and I find that over time I don't need to really do any work. So I might put them in here for 3 months in my colony cage, and I do nothing. I might just occasionally scrape around the water here just to mix it up a little bit. That's not really, I wouldn't consider that labour. So because of that treatment of the mulch, it's quite easy for me. I don't really do anything in the colony cage. I have a smaller grow-out cage, which is 2 meters by 2.4. That's about 6 feet by about 8 feet. And I have raised 50 to 60 birds in there up to butcher size from around the 6 to 8 week mark when I start to butcher them. So I've done that successfully in there, and I do need to rake it out every couple of days in there. So that's something I have to do there. But it's not a lot of work, and all I'm doing is turning it over. I'm not actually going in and shoveling out any manure. And what I find is I consider this my compost. I don't need to have a big pile of compost that I lift this up and go carry it to. This composts over months, and when I go to clear it out, it's ready for the garden. So this is my compost. I don't need to do anything. They'll do it for me. Because I've got the soil in here, they'll turn it over, and when I go to shovel it, it'll all mix in and be really, really great compost for the garden. It's all already done, already prepared, and already aged. So there's a lot of that nitrogen problem where your plants can get burnt. That's dealt with. So that's something there to consider. But another really strong benefit with having them on the ground is a lot of bugs come in here. A lot of bugs, especially if I come out here at night. I see bugs crawling all around, and I know they live along the edge because a lot of the bugs are attracted to their quail manure. That's some high quality food for them, so they get attracted in, and then the quail just dig around and pick them out throughout the day. So they come in at night, and then they burrow down, and then the quail get them during the day when they're not so docile. So it's a win-win because that drops my seed cost. The other thing, obviously, if you have them on the ground, you've really got to be careful of predators. So predators will try to dig their way in, they'll try to put holes in your cage. So that's something you've got to be careful of, and not just predators to harm the birds, but to steal the food and the eggs. So you've got to look for that, and I have had rats dig in before, but I've figured out ways to stop them. They're cunning little fellas, and they'll find little holes, and then you watch what happens, and you can observe the behaviours and find little signs of where they're trying to breach and deal with those breaches, and then eventually they give up, and eventually you can trap them and deal with them that way to keep the numbers down. But other than that, you obviously need to worry about flooding. So I've managed to raise up, because I put all that soil now, I've raised up a lot of the base, and so when I get a lot of rain, it might get wet in here when the storm comes or something, because it will come in sideways, but it'll dry up pretty quick, and it won't pool up like it used to get a little bit of flooding. And birds, yeah, they're not really designed for that, and it gets a bit stinky in there. So yeah, you build up that base, and then you don't get that flooding problem, and it dries out pretty well. Other than that, yeah, they're just happier, and I just enjoy having happy birds. I think that's more productive and just a good way to be. So that's just my opinion, but remember, it's not a moral crusade. They're your birds. If you're going to only raise them 6-8 weeks, then yeah, do whatever one you want to do, whatever works for you, depending on your setup. But it's a good journey, no matter which path you go down.